The first thing that comes to mind when people hear the science of cancer is this. They say, well, if this is true, if what you say is true and it's that simple, how come my doctor doesn't know about it? I mean, he went to medical school. He's a very smart guy. And I've known his family for years. He's a wonderful, principled person. He wouldn't deliberately hold back a control for cancer, and indeed, he's not. So the question is, how come your doctor doesn't know about this? Or worse, how come your doctor tells you to run for your life, stay away from this because it's quackery, and he thinks he's doing you a favor by telling you that? Why is this? How did this come about? Let's pick up the story and see how these interests captured control of the American medical establishment. The mechanism that they used to do this was brilliant. They used the tax-exempt foundations. Most of the great tax-exempt foundations, of this country at least, were created by the same financial interests which have a powerful influence in the pharmaceutical industry. We're talking about the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, and people like that. And what they did is they used the tax-exempt foundation, some of which they created themselves, and some of which they took over, which is not too difficult to do if you have a lot of money. And the tactic, as I mentioned, was pioneered by Rockefeller and Carnegie. So they started a campaign to do philanthropy. They figured if you can give away money for public causes, and these causes are viewed as good, why then people will like you. For Pillsbury, who had a particularly bad reputation in the community, this fellow Gates said, look, Mr. Pillsbury, let's go into the community and we'll do something called matching funds. You will put up $1 for every dollar that can be raised by the citizens themselves in the community for this hospital or for this library. He said, now the advantage of that is you get a lot of people working with you, and they view themselves as on your team. And so they're out there raising money, and they're mentioning your name. Every time they raise a buck, they're mentioning your name, and they become your publicity agents in a way. And they have an affinity to you because now they're working with you. And so you have all of these people working for free for you, raising money, and you only put up half the money that you would have ordinarily. So this way you still get your name across the top of the door of the library, but it's only cost you half as much money, and you got all this good publicity besides. That was the Pillsbury formula. Rockefeller saw that, and he hired Gates immediately. He says, you got to come to work for me, and he did. So this fellow Gates was largely the genius behind so much of this strategy. And it's what they called efficiency in philanthropy. That was their phrase for it. How to give away money efficiently. Meaning, how do you get back money? How do you get back more than what you give away? This has been the stratagem that has been used by so many of these people for many years, and the public has not really been aware of it. It's certainly true in the field of pharmaceutical research, which is, we're coming to that now. So now, for each dollar donated, you get back at least $2 and more in profits, and that's efficiency in philanthropy. Now let's put that into focus in terms of cancer research. The takeover of the medical industry was accomplished by the takeover of the medical schools, and this was done with efficiency in philanthropy. Before 1910, the state of medicine, the practice of medicine in America, was quite mixed. There were a lot of excellent doctors, a lot of excellent institutions, and there was a mix of homeopathic doctors and allopathic doctors and chiropractic doctors and doctors of all different schools of thought. Many of them were excellent, but some of them were quacks. Some of them had no training whatsoever, And it was easy to get a certificate to put on your wall. There were literally diploma mills. You could write in, and for a few dollars you could get a diploma, and you could be a doctor. And so there was a lot of abuse going on in the medical field at that time. And the public was aware of it. Congress was aware of it. Everybody wanted to do something about it. But what are you going to do about it? Well, the people that we're talking about, Rockefeller and Carnegie in particular, came to the picture and said, we will put up money. We will solve the problem. And so they hired a fellow by the name of Abraham Flexner. And in 1910, Flexner produced what was called the Flexner Report, which was widely circulated, in which he identified the problems and the weaknesses in American medicine and suggested that the schools of this country be completely made over and the standards be increased and that the funding be increased. And this was the solution, money, of course. Then the people who paid for Flexner to do this report offered the money. They offered tremendous amounts of money to the schools that would agree to cooperate with them. What did they ask? Not very much, really. They had what they called a triumvirate, 3 men primarily. There was Abraham Flexner, his brother Simon, I think it was Simon Flexner, and Fred Gates. He was the one I mentioned before who was the mastermind behind the strategy. Those 3 men, called the triumvirate, the donors said to the schools, we're giving you all this money. Now, would it be too much to ask if we could put some of our people on your board of directors to see that our money is being spent wisely? Well, when somebody's offering a starving school, a struggling school, a couple of $1 million, and all they ask in return is that some very well-known and prestigious individuals be added to your board of directors, the answer in many cases is yes, we'd be honored to have these people on our board of directors. Almost overnight, all of the major universities, which we now consider to be major universities in the field of medicine, received large grants from these sources and also accepted 1, 2, or 3 of these people that I mentioned on their board of directors, and the schools literally were taken over by the financial interests that put up the money. Now, what happened as a result of that is that the schools did receive an infusion of money. They were able to build new buildings. They were able to add expensive equipment to their laboratories. They were able to hire top-notch teachers. They were able to upgrade the level of medical education in America by 100-fold. But at the same time as doing that, they skewed the whole thing in the direction of pharmaceutical drugs. That was the efficiency in philanthropy. The doctors from that point forward in history would be taught pharmaceutical drugs. Those schools that did not accept those terms did not receive the money, and they generally fell by the wayside, and today you probably have never heard of them. All of the great teaching institutions in America were captured by the pharmaceutical interests in this fashion, and it's amazing how little money it really took to do it. So now the average doctor goes through school, he gets a great education, he has to be really smart to get through it. He learns all about drugs. He doesn't know too much about basic nutrition. I found that the average wife of these physicians knows more about nutrition than he does. But they sure know their drugs. And if you go to your typical doctor today, I don't care what it is, chances are you're going to walk out of there with a prescription. Why? Because that's what he has been trained to do. Drugs are the treatment of choice. Now, this